Hey guys, Johnny Nerd out here. Today I'm going to be talking about the CYC Photon motor. I'm going to be talking about what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and just my general first impressions over like the first 100 miles and after the first couple of months of selling them. All right, so in no particular order, I kind of just want to give an overview of the CYC. A lot of the features that people have been, looking forward to and all that. I want to go over them and give you my opinion on them, so you know whether or not they should be important to you. Sometimes maybe people put a lot of stock into things that they shouldn't be. So hopefully this video will help you answer a lot of those questions. So as you know, the Photon starts at about 950, so it's not a cheap motor by any means, but it is a very well made motor. So, you got to kind of decide on what that is. Unlocked, you can make it do 2000 watts, which is a little bit more powerful than the BBS HD by Bafang. In my opinion though, it's not really noticeably more powerful though. It's about the same power. So if you're like, I want something more powerful than that, technically it is more powerful, not by a crazy amount, and it might not be noticeable. So keep that in mind. One of the main things is the noise. If you guys are familiar with CYC motors, they spin super fast and they make a lot of noise. The Photon breaks the mold from normal CYC motors. It's not loud at all. In fact, I'd say it's about the same noise as the BBS O2. The BBS HD is a little bit noisier in my opinion than the O2, but I'd say the Photon is a little bit less noisy than the O2 probably. Not crazy, but it's very quiet. It's definitely a lot quieter than most geared hub motors that I've ridden. So another big feature of this motor is that it's torque sensing. That's probably one of the big reasons why people are going to be looking at this over the Bafangs, which are cadence sensing. It's definitely a more advanced system. It's smarter, but whether or not it's better for you, it doesn't mean that it's better. Just because it's advanced and it's smarter doesn't mean that it's just different. It doesn't mean that it's better for you. Cadence is just, hey, how fast are you pedaling? All right, let's give them this much power. That's kind of what it's doing. Some people like to be able to ghost pedal though. They don't want to have to, with the Photon, with a torque sensor, you have to put in power to get a lot of power. I mean, you could always hit the throttle, but as far as just pedaling, you have to put in a lot of power if you want to get a lot of power. So it's a much more natural feeling motor compared to the Bafangs. For some people it's going to be good. Some people prefer the cadence. They like to just, maintain a certain power level and then they'll just add whatever they want, but they know that the motor is going to put out a very specific amount. Across the board, the motor will be putting out this and then whatever you want to add to it. So decide on what you think is better for that. I've got other videos up on cadence versus torque sensing. Take a look at those. So there is a companion app that comes with it, the Ride, the Cycle app or whatever it's called. It's actually it pairs super easy, like almost too easy. I wasn't expecting it to be that easy, and you could fine tune the motor from there. It's a really nice app. It's a really nice interface that you could just, anybody, you don't have to be, like the Egg Rider with the Bafang. It's kind of, you gotta jump through hoops. This one's super nice, and it's super nice to be able to change the parameters so you could dial it in. You want to be more powerful, less powerful, right from your phone within 15 seconds. Huge. That's awesome. So I'm gonna go on to the one thing that I don't like right now is that the accessories are still very sparse, especially compared to the Bafang motors. They do have a headlight offering, but I wish it had like a tail light. I just wish there was a lot more options for accessories. Right now it's still super sparse. This is 2023, the summer of 2023. Just not a whole lot of options for accessories. So if you want to like deck out your bike, get it, plug in lights and stuff like that, Bafang is still the king when it comes to that. The other thing I've noticed as a reseller is that there's been a decent amount of people complaining about motor issues with it, either like hall sensor motors, just errors and things like that. Which I'm not sure. Maybe it's just like the first run. I would still say reliability goes to Bafang. So far, we're still early in on this Photon. I'm not trying to say that the Photon is not reliable. For me, I've been riding mine. I've got about 100 miles on mine. I've had zero issues. I've been kind of babying it. I have gotten it up to about 30 miles an hour. but I keep my temperature on there. The thing that's awesome with these displays, and I got the cheap display too, the SW102, is that thing, it'll tell you tons of information. So if you're a data nerd on there, it'll say tons of information. It'll tell you your motor temperature, which is huge. So you could always keep it below, 150 degrees or whatever. It'll say your controller temperature. It'll say your cadence that you're pedaling at. And I always tell people, don't shift until you've hit about 80 RPM. And then once you hit 80 RPM, sometimes you're like, I don't know, what am I doing? I got to count my legs. This will tell you exactly what you're doing. It'll tell you how much power you're putting into it. It'll say, at the end of your ride, it'll say how much you've averaged. Like you averaged 60 watts. And at the peak, you put in 350 watts. Maybe when you were climbing a hill. It's just kind of cool. It's kind of cool data that if you're a nerd, you like. My display, the SW102, it has a heart rate data function too. So there is nothing yet, but it looks like there is going to be some sort of plug-in for reading your heart rate monitoring, that would be huge. I think that would be awesome. The install was fairly simple. I'd say, my first time doing the install, it was a little like, oh, what? This goes in here. But after I did it, I was like, that was very simple. It's a very simple install, I would say. The first time you do anything though, you're always like, what? This goes where? There's a lot of these little parts. I could see as an installer doing these being like, this is the way to go. It seems very simple. Obviously they use high-end splined crank arms too. Bafang uses a square taper. Square taper is not really designed for hardcore abuse. If you're putting a lot of pressure on it, sometimes square taper can round out. I've heard people complain about breaking their crank arms off of square taper. I've never experienced that, and I've never had anybody experience that. So it is a very, I would say, marginalized error or issue that people have. And it's usually with like aggressive downhill mountain bikers, or if you're really pushing your bike, that you're going to have issues like that. But it is still nice to see a splined crank arm and bottom bracket setup. It just shows that it's nice and high end. The chain line is way better on this Photon than it is with the BBS HD especially, and even better than the O2. But it's almost like too good. We put it on Shane's bike at the shop and we tried to put on the 50 tooth, and it was actually too close that we couldn't even put the 50 tooth on, so we had to go with the 38 tooth. Right now there's the 34, 38, 50 tooth, but they are coming out with some more chainring options, which is nice. But yeah, the CYC has a much better chain line. For most people, I think it's going to be a big improvement. Another nice thing about the CYC is that they come with they have options on the wiring harness. You either have a 2-to-1 or a 4-to-1 wiring harness, which means that you have the option to run 2 wires, which is just your display and your throttle, to keep it really less bulky wires, or you could run 4-to-1, which means you could run 2 brake cutoffs. And the awesome thing is the Bafang cutoffs work with the CYC. It's the same connector. So you could use Bafang brake cutoffs. You could have integrated brake cutoffs. It is a torque sensor. It's not really needed to have brake cutoffs, but there's been a couple times where it's actually helped me, because I'm the type of person when I'm at a red light, sometimes I put my feet on there and I'm kind of going, and if it senses pressure, it'll go on you. I still err on the side of getting brake cutoffs, so it's up to you. And the CYC brake cutoffs that they have, they only come with like the universal ones, which mean that they get mounted onto your existing setup. It's really easy to install because they have a little LED light on there that tells you if you're too close or too far from the magnet. Way better than the Bafang ones, so that's at least really nice. There is no gear shift sensor output, which I really hope that they do change that. It's less important when you have a torque sensor to have a gear shift sensor, but I'd still like to have it. I still want to have I want to be as a well-lubed machine as possible, and having a gear shift sensor would definitely add that. But it's less important. With the Bafang, absolutely needed, in my opinion. CYC, not so much. So yeah, there's really not a whole lot to dislike about this motor, other than the price point compared to like a BBS O2. It's over double the price. The lack of accessories that are currently available for it, and the reliability is unknown, especially if you're somebody who wants to push it hard. Definitely keep an eye on your motor temp and your controller temp and things like that. I'd be keeping it below 160. I can't confirm at the moment. There is an internal temperature that it shuts itself down, but if you're waiting for that, it may be too late. The motor itself is small. It's smaller than the Bafang motors. Not a ton smaller, but it is a decent amount smaller. So yeah, hopefully this helps you decide whether you want to hold out and wait for the Photons or find somebody that has them. Right now I still have a few left in stock, but obviously by the time you're watching this, it's going to be irrelevant. But check johnnynerdOut.com, see if I have some. Oh, one other thing that I really like is that one motor, it's one motor core, and all you do is just, you get the different size spindle lengths and kits to mount it on whatever bike you want, whether you have a BB92, 68, 100, 120. So swapping it from one bike to another, it's like totally future proofable. So if you got a fat bike now and then you want to switch to a normal road bike later, you totally can. You just buy an adapter for like 50 or 60 bucks or something, and then it'll fit onto a totally different bike. So that's awesome. That's not the case with the Bafangs. With that being said, check out johnnynerdOut.com for all your custom e-bike help, support. I do consultations. We do conversions at the shop. We're in Vancouver, Washington, just outside of Portland, Oregon. All right, guys. Have a good one. Hopefully this helped you. Later.